Okay, I'm doing for my 8th grade book report the thing about jellyfish. And in the thing about jellyfish, you have two main characters that are kind of there for throughout like a quarter of the story, and then it moves on to one main character, which is Zoo. But she's also the main character in the start of the book. Her other friend um, dies in a incident, and she kind of gets talked about throughout the entire book. So I'm just gonna begin at ground zero, which is it kind of begins at the first time they meet, which is at when they're like 5 or 6, at like this swim practice kind of a thing, and they talk, and then they become friends, and then it goes to kind of like second grade, and then they build off of that, and they're really 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 good friends. So like they're the only friends that they ever had basically throughout their entire lives. And then one day, in 7th grade, her best friend kind of starts becoming, a bit more, you know, self worried towards what she wears, how she looks, you know, who she hangs out with, and that starts with not hanging out with her best friend Zoo, which is the main character. So she hangs out then with this popular group of girls, which leads to them kind of, spreading apart from each other, not being as good as friends as they used to be. And then what happens is that they get super angry at each other, and it kind of turns out to be like kind of then a tit for a tat kind of a thing. you know One of them does something mean, then the other one does something mean, and then it just Zoo just does something just really 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 bad, which causes her best friend cry on the last day of school. So she does this at the last day of school, because earlier on in the book she had spoken about how she would never ever want to be her best friend, Zoo's best friend, like part of that kind of popular girls group. So she asks Zoo, if that ever happens, tell me. And so that's what she does. And basically, Zoo fills her locker with liquids, like ice cubes, and then fills it up in her locker with like a bunch of like ice cubes and stuff, and then lets that all melt. And she does this before school, and then when she gets to school, all those liquids spill on her, and everything is ruined. All of her schoolwork, her backpack is wet. Her clothes are wet. Everything is just destroyed. And then and this all happens at the last day of school. She leaves school early, and that's the last time Zoo ever sees her, because she goes on a trip. Not Zoo, but her best friend goes on a trip somewhere near the coast, and she goes swimming. And sadly, during the swimming incident, it's never really said how she died. Just that she drowns. No one says, "Oh, she was tired and she just couldn't keep up with the waves and just drowned," or "Oh, the tide, pulled her and smashed her against rocks." Is one thing that gets mentioned on in the book. Like, a few people were saying that's probably what happened, but it's never proven. And this is where the title comes into play, and that's Jellyfish. So this is like the third week after summer vacation, after her best friend dies, and they're at this aquarium with her school, and she kind of wanders off from the school group, and she finds this tank of jellyfish, and she reads about the jellyfish, and then she finds out about the jellyfish and all that, and she finds out about this one type of jellyfish, which I think is called the Irukandji jellyfish, and it's like the worst kind of jellyfish you could be stung by, because jellyfish, they don't really sting, they're not electric, they give out a poison kind of like a snake. So they're basically, the Irukandji are like the rattlesnakes of jellyfish. the kind of like the worst type that you can get stung by. And she believes then that her best friend gets stung by these jellyfish because the area where her best friend drowns, that's kind of where those jellyfish are. Like, it used to be that they were like way, way like in Australia, which that's another thing that I'll have to come back to later. That those jellyfish came there, and then after time they've just expanded so much because because whales eat them and other kinds of fish eat them, and they humans kill those not jellyfish, whales and other animals that eat them, which lets them expand and then moves across the ocean, which is all mentioned in the book. And that's kind of what starts her theory, because those jellyfish immigrate then to that part of America, and she believes because her friend was a really good swimmer that's what caused her death. And she just gets really, 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 really obsessed with that. It's all she thinks about. And also, as her friend dies, she spirals into a depression where she never ever talks. Throughout the entire book, all it is her thoughts, what she's thinking. Never ever ever talks really, unless she absolutely has to. Like, if she has to say, if she has to say yes or no. But that's really the majority. Until the end of the book, she really does not talk in first person. And so she researches this, and then she researches scientists that could help her find this out. And one of them is a man that has been stung by an irukandji willingly. And then, so she finds him and decides to try and reach out to him. She calls like the laboratory he works at, and then she hangs up because she's still too scared to talk. She refuses to talk. So then she decides to fly to where that person is, that famous jellyfish scientist, or what's the word, like, oh, I forgot what the word is. A scientist that studies the ocean and creatures that live within the ocean. And he lives all the way in Australia. So she finds out about this group of kids, I think she says like 4 years before everything takes place in the story, where they had gotten on a plane to go to this place, right? And so they get on this plane and they go to this, they want to go to this like amusement park, and that does not work out for them. So she finds out about the story, and she finds out that you can fly at the age of 12 alone. So that's kind of what she plans. So she saves up all of her money, and she has all these ideas, and she's like, oh, I could, when I'm there, I need to get, a cab from here to there, and I need to get a hotel at this place. And then she goes through all of that so she can meet this scientist and talk about, is it possible that my friend was stung and killed by this jellyfish? So she does it, and she gets everything done. She gets enough money. She, has everything planned out perfectly. And sadly, it does not work because she gets to the airport, and this is the one thing she messed up, which is you can fly within the country alone at 12. You cannot fly internationally at that age. So that's kind of how she gets found out. So she runs away from home, gets to the airport, everything's working perfectly, and then that happens. So she's, she gets there, everything happens, and now she's sitting at the airport, and she just waits for her mom to get there. And her mom gets there, and then her brother and her brother's boyfriend, and they, they're not angry. They understand, kind of what happened. And then, so that's like kind of the first time she talks throughout the entire book before her friend dies and before they separate and are not friends anymore. So then they find all that out, and something that I forgot to mention is that the only person she really was around during this time frame was her science, like her lab person that she sits next to in science. And they basically kind of become friends in a way that doesn't quite make sense. They never talk, but they're friends. They tolerate each other. And basically, her parents, come and they get her, and it's kind of then goes through a few days of her kind of just opening up to the world and just kind of understanding that, hey, maybe it's okay that my friend, sadly passed, and that I need to move on, not only for myself but for my friend. And she kind of then goes and does exactly that. And there's this thing at the school at the end of the year, because now it's already been, you know, 10 something months since that happened, and they're getting towards the end of the year, so then they have this end school ball that she wasn't planning going to, because 3 days before that would happen was when she was planning to get on the plane to go to Australia. And she's kind of finally opening up. She's trying to integrate herself into everything, but it's not working out the best. And then that's where she decides, or her mother decides for her, to have her go to this ball, because she feels like it's the best thing for her. And that's exactly what she does. And it turns out to be a great experience for her. You don't really find that much out about it, is because that's the ending of the book. You see her, or you don't see her, you read, and she's entering kind of the ball, and she sees her her friend that she sits next to in lab, and he waves at her and she waves back at him. And then that's kind of the end of the story. It just basically says that, and then I started walking to him, and then that's the end. That's literally the end. Okay, so that was once again, my 8th grade book report on The Thing About Jellyfish.